Ned Stark stood in the Tower of the Hand, his jaw tight, eyes fixed on the parchment in his hand. Renly Baratheon's offer, bold and unexpected. Renly had ridden swiftly, coming not with force but with promises. He offered alliance, men, and the crown, not for himself, but for Ned to support him now, to act before the Lannisters could react. He claimed that Robert's children were not Robert's, a truth Ned knew too well, and offered to place himself on the throne instead of Joffrey, a younger Baratheon, but a Baratheon nonetheless. In the original course of history, Ned had refused. He had honored Robert's last will and insisted on Stannis's claim, adhering to the law. But law had not saved him, this time. Perhaps driven by a subtle change in thought, a moment of foresight or weariness, or a glimpse at the sleeping city crumbling under Lannister Goldhead, Stark made a different choice. He accepted Renly. Eyes had lit up when Ned clasped his forearm and agreed to support his claim. Within hours, the plans were set in motion. Renly rode back to summon his men, while Ned began quietly consolidating power within the city. He sent trusted agents to sway the Gold Cloaks early, meeting secretly with Commander Janos Slynt to ensure loyalty through both gold and the threat of exposure. Lord Petyr Baelish raised an eyebrow when Ned informed him of his choice. Backing Renly, not Stannis. Stannis will never bend. Renly might. Littlefinger smirked, ever the opportunist. And what if Joffrey sits the throne by the morrow? He won't. Not if we move quickly. Ned knew time was a sword, hanging over their heads. That very night, Lord Varys slithered into Ned's solar. A curious choice, Lord Stark. I must admit, I expected the elder brother. I need peace in the realm, Varys. Stannis brings fire and blood. Renly brings unity, and with my backing, legitimacy. You said you wanted the realm to be stable. Varys gave one of his shadowy smiles. Then let us hope the younger Baratheon proves a swift and popular king. The next day, King Robert died. His body still cooling, Cersei moved to claim power for her son, Joffrey. She summoned the council and expected silence, obedience. Instead, she found Ned Stark already seated, surrounded by Seer Barristan, Selmy, Renly's messengers, and a curious absence of her usual allies. Ned presented Robert's will. He declared the illegitimacy of Joffrey in a voice that echoed through the hall. Cersei's eyes burned with fury, but before she could command her guards to seize him, Janos Slynt entered, with 200 gold cloaks. They stood with Ned. Cersei, her hand tightening around her son's, realized the tide had shifted. She was arrested before she could utter a word. Joffrey cried out, but Seer Barristan stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. Your Grace, I am afraid you are no king. The Red Keep was secured by dusk. Renly arrived at King's Landing with a column of knights and Stormlanders before the week was over. The realm was shocked, confused, but not yet at war. With Cersei and her children under house arrest in the Tower of the Hand, and Renly proclaimed protector of the realm, Westeros watched with bated breath. Stannis was the first to respond. His raven arrived, filled with fury. You crown a usurper, while the true king lives. You dishonor Robert and the gods. Ned responded with a long, formal letter. He did not insult Stannis. He acknowledged his claim, but argued that peace was the higher cause. Come to King's Landing, he wrote, and serve the realm beside your brother. But Stannis did not respond. He was already preparing ships in Dragonstone. In the north, Robb Stark received his father's letter and learned that the Lannisters were under arrest. There was no need to march south, no whisper of war. His father still ruled from the capital, and Winterfell remained quiet for now, but all was not calm. In the shadows Baelish plotted, the Lannisters fumed, and in the east a young Targaryen widow hatched her dragons in fire and blood, unaware that Westeros had avoided one war only to step into the shadow of another dot. And in the crypts of Winter, the old king slept uneasily. The Iron Throne, now empty of both Robert and Joffrey, loomed over the great hall like a challenge. Renly stood before it, not seated, not yet. He waited, for he was wise enough to know that victory claimed too soon often crumbles like ash. Ned Stark remained hand of the king. His presence the only reason the lords of Westeros didn't revolt at Renly's sudden rise. Renly was charming, young and charismatic, but unproven. Ned was a Stark. In the eyes of many, his honor legitimized the transfer of power more than any bloodline. A small council was formed, reshaped under Ned's supervision. Seer Barristan Selmy remained, though conflicted. Renly brought in Seer Loras Tyrell, giving the Tyrells a strong foothold in court. Lord Mathis Rowan, a steady reachman, took a seat. Varys, of course, lingered, whispering counsel. Littlefinger was kept closely watched, but still valuable. Ned mistrusted him, but knew the man had his uses. Cersei and her children were held under heavy guard in the Tower of the Hand. Tommen and Myrcella were too young to understand the gravity of what had occurred. Joffrey, however, spat and threatened, screaming for heads and swords, but without a crown and without allies. His voice was as empty as the seat he claimed. Jaime Lannister still sat with Tywin in the west, unaware at first of the sudden fall of his sister and nephew. When word reached him, it came with Renly's seal and Ned's stern writing. Lord Tywin Lannister is to appear before the court to answer for his family's crimes. He will be granted safe passage and honorable treatment. The letter enraged Tywin, but even he knew better than to storm King's Landing blind. He summoned his bannermen. War was not yet declared, but it hung in the air like lightning before a storm. Ned sent Seer Roderick Castle North to Winterfell with a warning for Robb. Do not act unless called. The North must remain strong and ready. Robb obeyed, but worry gnawed at him. The quiet in the North felt unnatural. Without a Lannister army marching, his sword had no target, but he sharpened it still. Meanwhile, Renly moved quickly to win favor. He hosted feasts, granted pardons, and promised prosperity. The Tyrells threw their weight behind him entirely. Margaery Tyrell was brought to court poised, clever, and already spoken of as a future queen. Ned, however, remained wary. You want to wed her already? He asked Renly in private. Renly nodded. I need the Tyrells, and the realm needs a queen. I don't love her. I know who your heart belongs to, Ned cut in, though his tone wasn't judgmental. But love has little to do with thrones. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen led her small band across the Red Waste. Her dragons, barely more than serpents with wings, clung to her shoulders. She knew nothing of Renly's ascension, or the coup that spared Westeros from immediate war, but she dreamed still of returning. In her dreams, dragons soared above King's Landing and fire consumed the usurpers. In time, she would learn of the new king. In time, she would decide whether he was another usurper or a potential ally. Back in Westeros, Stannis Baratheon read his brother's letters with growing disdain. He plays king with flowers in his crown, he muttered. Melisandre, ever at his side, whispered of a greater destiny. You are the chosen one. You are Azor, a high reborn. Let them dance in the south. We shall burn them from the east. Davos. Seaworth tried to speak reason. If you strike now, the realm will turn against you. Wait, let the truth about the Lannisters spread. Let them see Renly's crown for what it is stolen. But Stannis was not one to wait. He began forging alliances quietly. Ships were built, ravens flew to the Stormlands, and word began to spread of a strange red priestess who claimed the Lord of Light had chosen one true king in the Riverlands. Catelyn Stark journeyed to Riverrun to see her dying father. She was relieved to hear her husband still lived, that war had been averted for now, but her heart remained uneasy. She knew the South would never accept peace for long, and far too. The north, at Castle Black, Jon Snow looked out over the wall, unaware of the shifting thrones and crowns. Ghost at his side. He listened as Lord Commander Mormont spoke of ranging beyond the wall. Something stirs in the frost, Jon, and the realm below forgets the true danger. But Jon, like everyone else, would be drawn into the game soon enough. The board had changed. The war had not yet begun, but the pieces were in motion. Ravens flew through the autumn skies of Westeros like black arrows, carrying news to every corner of the realm. Renly Baratheon, younger brother of King Robert, had taken the throne with the backing of Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Warden. Of the north, the capital remained calm, the Lannisters disarmed, and, for the first time in years, the people of King's Landing dared to hope for stability. But peace was a fragile thing. Tywin Lannister, Lord of Casterly Rock, sat brooding at the head of a long table, his golden lion banners fluttering behind him. The letter from the capital lay open in front of him, sealed with Renly's stag and Ned Stark's direwolf. Cersei under arrest. Joffrey deposed. The Iron Throne usurped by a younger son with no legal claim. Tywin read aloud, his voice steady but seething. Will we ride for King's Landing? Seer Kevan asked. No, Tywin said. We will not give them what they want. Not yet. He turned to his commanders. We consolidate power in the west. No rash movements. Let the Starks and Baratheons grow comfortable. And when they do, we strike. Jaime Lannister, still stationed in the Riverlands with a host of Lannister knights, began small provocations against Taliban. Skirmishes flared along the borders. Ned sent ravens, warning Tywin to restrain his son or face consequences. But Tywin was counting on that very consequence. He knew war was inevitably. He would choose the time and place. Back in King's Landing, Renly wore the crown lightly, but he ruled with growing confidence. He spent his mornings in council with Ned, his afternoons walking the city and speaking with lords, and his nights beside Loras Tyrell. He declared new reforms, grain stores for winter, reduced taxes for the poor, and renewed trade with Braavos. And Old Town, the small folk began to chant his name in the markets. Ned watched from the shadows. He remained hand, but he felt increasingly like a father watching a young man play king. He did not resent Renly's optimism, but he feared its fragility. Hope makes you careless, Ned warned him. The Lannisters do not forget. Stannis will not bend, and peace will not hold if all you offer is smiles. Renly smiled anyway. But smiles are a good place to start, Lord Stark. Still, Ned prepared. He doubled the city guard. He sent ravens north, requesting more supplies from Winter. He arranged quiet meetings with neutral lords, urging them to visit the capital and speak in Renly's court. He knew what was coming. A storm never passed by just because you wished it to. One evening, while reviewing reports in the Tower of the Hand, Ned was summoned urgently. A ship had arrived. From Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon had responded. The missive was blunt, lacking in any politicking. I do not recognize Renly Baratheon as king. He is a traitor and a usurper. I demand he and Eddard Stark surrender themselves to me for judgment under the Seven. There is only one rightful king. Robert's true heir is dead. The Iron Throne is mine by law and blood. The Lord of Light has shown me the way. Attached was a strange symbol, fiery and red, unfamiliar to most. Melisandre's influence, clearly Renly, read the letter, face unmoving. He declares war. Then, he said, handing the letter to Ned. He declares more than that, Ned replied. He declares prophecy. Renly narrowed his eyes. He was always the colder one, but now he's mad as Ares. Mad or not, he will not stop. He'll come with fire, not words. We'll be ready. But readiness was a matter of debate. The Royal Navy remained mostly loyal to the crown, but many ships had scattered after Robert's death. Storm's End was still being fortified, and the Tyrrells, while supportive, had not committed their full strength. Margaery Tyrell had grown popular in the capital already. She walked among the people, distributed bread, and made pious appearances at the sept. Renly announced they would be wed within the month, though the marriage would be one of politics, not love. It would tie the South to the new king decisively. Ned approved, though he kept one eye north, and in the north strange things stirred. Reports from beyond the wall became more urgent. Ghost villagers, shadows with blue eyes. Benjen Stark still missing. Jon Snow, now sworn to the Night's Watch, joined Lord Commander Mormont on a ranging mission beyond the wall at Winterfell. Robb continued training, receiving letters from his father regularly, yet he couldn't shake a growing restlessness. Peace in the South was an illusion, and he knew it. He sensed that the North would be dragged into war sooner or later. He just didn't know when. Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen crossed into Qarth, her dragons growing each day. The merchant kings were awestruck. She was offered ships, titles, and gifts. She learned of Robert's death, then surprisingly, that the Iron Throne had passed not to his son, nor to his brother Stannis, but to Renly, backed by the man who had once betrayed her family, Eddard Stark. Strange, she murmured too. See, Jorah, the wolf serves the stag, and the lion has no teeth. Westeros is changing, Jorah said, and perhaps it's time you returned. Daenerys looked westward and said nothing. Back in King's Landing, as the bells rang for Renly's engagement feast, Ned Stark stood alone at the edge of the celebration. He knew the taste of peace, and he knew how quickly it could turn to blood. The war had not begun, but it would, and when it did, there would be no turning back. The day Renly Baratheon wed Margaery Tyrell, King's Landing bloomed in green and gold. The banners of House Tyrell adorned the streets, and the scent of roses mixed with the sea breeze from Blackwater Bay. The people cheered for their young, handsome king and his beautiful, graceful bride. Loras Tyrell stood tall beside his sister, smiling, proud, hiding the twist of emotion behind his eyes. Eddard Stark observed it all in silence from his position beside the dais. He had not dressed for celebration. His Stark cloak hung heavy, a direwolf brooch pinning it at the shoulder, as if to remind everyone that though the city celebrated, the war still waited beyond its walls. During the feast, Seer Barristan Selmy leaned toward him. This peace, it feels like a shadow, Lord Stark. It is a shadow, Ned replied. We are merely sitting in it, waiting for the sun to move. The next morning, news arrived that the shadow was already shifting. Stannis Baratheon had set sail from Dragonstone. His fleet, aided by loyal bannermen and a growing number of fanatics devoted to the Lord of Light, had moved quickly and without warning. They bypassed King's Landing entirely and made for Storm's End. Stannis sought to strike first, to claim his ancestral seat, to show the realm who the true Baratheon was. Renly's joy turned cold. He wants my home, he said, standing at the map table in the small council chamber. He thinks to steal it and shame me. Ned pressed a finger to the parchment. You cannot let Storm's End fall. The lords of the Stormlands follow you because they trust your strength. Lose that fortress, and they begin to waver. Loras stepped forward. Let me ride ahead with 1,000 knights. We'll break his siege before it forms. No, Renly said sharply. We ride together, all of us. We go as a king should at the head of his banners. Ned frowned, and the capital. Renly turned to him. I leave it in your hands. Lord Stark, the city is yours to hold. Ned didn't answer at once, but he nodded. Within the week, Renly and his host departed. The banners of House Tyrell and House Baratheon shimmered in the sun as they marched towards Storm's End. Margaery remained behind, guarded in the Red Keep, already being groomed as queen by the ladies of the court. With Renly gone, King's Landing changed. It grew quieter, more tense. Varys remained busy, whispering with merchants and sailors. Littlefinger lingered near Margaery's inner circle, charming her ladies and gaining ground. Ned watched them both. He ordered Tommen and Myrcella to be moved from the Tower of the Hand to a more comfortable residence within the castle walls. Joffrey remained under stricter watch, his temper and pride at danger still. The boy spoke often of escape, of swords and vengeance, but no one listened. No one came to free him, except one. Tyrion Lannister arrived at King's Landing under the banner of peace. He requested audience with Lord Stark and came alone, unarmed, with only Bronn at his side. I come not for war, Tyrion said, sipping the wine Ned had offered, but to speak of my family. Your family is under arrest, and your father defies the crown. My family is complicated, Tyrion replied. But you're not a fool, Lord Stark. You know how this ends. Tywin will never kneel. He will march. Ned stared at him. Then let him. You think war is that simple? That a single army wins a single battle and the realm heals? Think justice is worth the cost. Tyrion smiled sadly. I used to believe that, before I saw what the cost really is. He set down the cup and leaned forward. Release my sister and her children. Let them go to Casterly Rock under guard. You keep the throne. We keep our pride. It prevents war. Ned shook his head. No, they will answer for what they've done, even the children. Ned's jaw tightened. They are safe. For now, Tyrion rose. Then you've made your choice, and so will my father. When Tyrion left, Ned turned to Seer Barristan. Ready the city, double the guard. Send ravens to the Reach and the north. War had not yet come, but it was approaching like thunder on the horizon. Across the sea, Daenerys Targaryen stood in the palace of Xaro Shone Daxos, her dragons now larger, crawling with confidence along her arms and shoulders. She listened as the spice merchants of Karth debated, offering her ships to cross the narrow sea. Renly Baratheon sits the throne, one of them said. He is young, inexperienced. Then let me challenge him, Daenerys said. Let me take what was stolen. Ser Jorah murmured, he is not Robert, and Ned Stark supports him. If we sail now, we sail into uncertain waters. Daenerys clenched her fists. Uncertainty is better than waiting. If I wait too long, there will be nothing left to claim. She turned her eyes westward again, whispering the names of her enemies, Lannister, Baratheon, Stark. In the far north, Jon Snow stood atop the wall, looking out at the white wastes. Ghost sat beside him, ears perked. The wind carried strange sounds, faint, unnatural. The Night's Watch had gone deeper than ever before, searching for answers. But what they found was silence and bones. The dead don't stay dead. Samwell Tarly whispered after they found the first. Abandoned camp, and still the world below forgot them. In the Riverlands, Jaime Lannister received orders from Tywin. To provoke Tully forces further, he raided villages under Tully protection, daring Riverrun to respond. Catelyn Stark, still at her father's bedside, wrote to Ned, "The lion tests our patience. He wants war. Be careful. And if war comes, end it quickly." But Ned knew that there would be no quick ending. Not anymore. Renly's army neared Storm's End. Stannis awaited him, calm, cold, with fire behind his eyes. The brothers would meet. One would not survive. The banners of House Baratheon flew high above Storm's End. One crowned stag, golden against black, the other dark and sterner stag of fire beneath a red sun. Two brothers stood beneath those banners, but neither looked at the other as kin. Renly Baratheon's camp stretched across the field west of the castle, vast and glittering with the flowered armor of the Reach. Tyrell knights sang as they polished their blades. Lords laughed and drank, confident in numbers and charm. Loras Tyrell walked the perimeter each evening, checking the guards personally. They all believed the battle would be Swifter brothers' arrogance crushed under the weight of a king's crown, but Eddard Stark had ridden south to join Renly against his instincts. He left the capital in the hands of Ser Barristan and 1,000 loyal guards. Before leaving, he reminded his daughter Sansa, still a silent shadow in the Red Keep, to stay vigilant. Arya, now cloaked in servant's garb, wandered the halls. Like a ghost, seen by few, unnoticed by most. In Renly's war tent, Ned stood across from the young king and spoke plainly. "You must talk to him, one last time, before the blood is spilled." Renly's brow furrowed. "You expect Stannis to listen. He thinks himself chosen by some fire god." "He is still your brother," Ned said. "Speak as men, if only for Robert's sake." The next dawn, Renly agreed. The two Baratheon brothers met in the shadow of the walls, guarded but unarmed. Ned watched from a short distance, flanked by Ser Loras and Ser Davos Seaworth. Stannis' face was carved from stone. "You wear a crown." Stolen from the dead, Renly's voice was calm but firm. "And you claim one no one will give you. The realm does not want you, brother. It never has. I am the rightful king," Stannis said. "Born before you, named in law." "The gods care nothing for law," Renly snapped. "The realm is made of people, and they choose me. You mock the gods with flowers and games, and you set fire to them with your red witch." Stannis' mouth twitched, but his eyes stayed cold. "Come to Dragonstone, bend the knee. I will spare you. You'd execute me the moment I arrived." "No," Stannis said, "but I would take your head if you refused." Renly turned away. "Then there's nothing more to say." That night, the camp stirred uneasily. Fires flickered strangely. Some whispered of red stars in the sky. Others said they saw shadows moving where none should be. Ned awoke to shouting. He burst into Renly's tent, only moments too late. Renly Baratheon lay on the floor, his throat opened wide, his eyes wide, with shock, lips mouthing words he never spoke. No guards had seen the killer. No blade had been found. The air smelled faintly of ash. Laura's Tyrell screamed. He knelt by his lover's body, his hands bloody as he tried to press the wound shut, as if that could call the life back into him. Outside, chaos exploded. The Tyrell banners were torn down, horses saddled, swords drawn. Some accused Stannis, others accused betrayal within. Seer Davos Seaworth looked ill, and Ned saw in his eyes a truth unspoken. He grabbed Davos by the arm. "What happened?" Davos hesitated. "A shadow," he whispered, "with a man's face. A face like Stannis's." Ned's blood turned cold. Renly was dead, and no blade had done it. By midday, the Tyrells were riding west, retreating in grief and fury. Laura's did not stay. He would not serve a brother's killer. They abandoned the field, leaving only a fraction of Renly's men behind, those still loyal to the idea of the crown. Ned stood over the body as it was prepared for burial. His thoughts swirled. The war had not even begun, and already the realm had lost another king, but he would not let the chaos consume them. He called together Renly's commanders. He spoke plainly, directly. "Stannis Baratheon has killed his brother through dark sorcery. He means to burn this realm, to cleanse it for his god. If you are loyal to peace, to the people, then ride with me. We will stop him before he reaches." King's Landing, some refused, others bent the knee. Ned rode hard, returning to the capital within 5 days. The wind fierce and his heart heavier than ever. Back in the Red Keep, he summoned the small council. "Renly is dead," he said, his voice like iron, "murdered by magic. Stannis marches." Seer Barristan bowed his head. Varys looked troubled. Margaery Tyrell stood like a statue, face pale, hands clenched at her sides. She said only one thing: "Then he must not reach these walls." Ned nodded. "We prepare the city for siege." And beyond the Blackwater Bay, the fires of Stannis's fleet grew larger by the day. The bells of King's Landing tolled, not in celebration, but in mourning. News of Renly Baratheon's death spread through the city like wildfire, burning away. The illusion of peace that had briefly taken root. The people wept and whispered, confused by the shifting winds of power. One king dead, another marching, and the Lord of Winterfell, now the last pillar of order, bore the weight of both crown and country without ever asking for either. Ned Stark stood once again in the small council chamber, his face grave. Across from him sat Margaery Tyrell, dressed in green and black, widowhood cloaking her youth like ash on fresh snow. She had not cried where anyone could see her, but her eyes no longer searched rooms for Renly, only for vengeance. "He was killed by magic," she said coldly. "We should tell the realm." "No," Ned replied. "Most of Westeros still doesn't believe in magic. If we tell them Stannis killed Renly with shadows, they will laugh they will fear him as something more than mortal. Either way, it weakens us, and what do we do instead? We hold the city. We survive the siege, and we crush Stannis in the light of day, not in tales of shadow." Preparations began at once. Every ship in the royal fleet was recalled and docked within the Blackwater Bay. Engineers constructed scorpions and catapults atop the walls. Barrels of wildfire, stored deep beneath the city since the days of the Mad King, were catalogued and moved to key locations. Ned did not trust the substance, but Tyrion, who had remained in the capital after his diplomatic failure, argued for its use. "It's fire against fire," Tyrion said. "You won't beat a red priestess's god with swords alone." Ned begrudgingly agreed. Tyrion was given control over the city's defense mechanisms under Seer Barristan's supervision. Meanwhile, ravens flew to the north, to the Riverlands, to the Vale. Ned called on old loyalties. He knew Robb would answer if needed, but he also knew what summoning the north would mean. If Robb crossed the neck with his army, there would be no retreat. The war would be total. He hesitated, for now Stannis' fleet was spotted on the horizon. Within the fortnight, nearly 200 ships, sleek and black, bearing the red sigil of the Lord of Light. Davos Seaworth led the vanguard. Catapults lined their decks. Fires danced at their prows. They flew no banners of truce. The siege of kings. Landing had begun. Ned stood atop the city walls as the first fires bloomed across the bay. His armor was heavy, untouched since Robert's rebellion. He had hoped never to wear it again. By his side stood Tyrion, directing defenses. Seer Barristan led the city watch, while the remnants of Renly's loyal knights formed the front line. Lannister banners were absent. Tywin had not declared openly for or against either side. The West watched, waiting. Stannis' ships pushed forward relentlessly. The first day, they bombarded the outer defenses. Archers returned fire. The bay choked with smoke. The second day, siege ladders were raised, but burned before they could reach the walls. Stannis' forces lost hundreds trying to land. The wildfire, unleashed in tight waves, turned whole ships into floating pyres. But on the third day, the wind changed. A storm rolled in from the east, feeding the Red God's hunger. Stannis landed men on the shore near the Mud Gate, and chaos erupted. Seer Barristan led a charge into the breach. Knights clashed with fire-kissed fanatics. Amid the screaming, Ned rode through the thick of it, his sword ice-cleaving a path. The years had not dulled his edge. If anything, his fury sharpened it. He fought not for Renly, nor for politics, but for his daughters, for the people behind the walls, for a realm already scarred by too many corpses. On the fourth day, the tide of the battle turned. From the west, horns echoed. The Tyrells had returned. Mace Tyrell, at the head of 1,000 fresh knights, swept into the flank of Stannis' beach force. Loras led the charge personally, his white armor streaked with green. Whatever grief he bore for Renly, he turned it into pure, deadly rage. Stannis' forces, already weakened by fire and attrition, began to fall back. Their retreat turned into a rout. Hundreds were captured. Dozens drowned trying to reach there. Ships, Stannis himself vanished. His flagship was last seen drifting, smoke rising from its deck, a red priestess standing tall beside him. Some claimed they saw a great shadow leap from the boat before it sank. Others said the gods punished him for kinslaying, but none could confirm if Stannis Baratheon lived or died when the smoke cleared. King's Landing still stood. Ned, exhausted and bloodied, addressed the city from the Red Keep. "This war is not over," he said, "but today we kept our people safe. The Iron Throne does not belong to magic nor madness. It belongs to peace and to law. So long as I draw breath, I will guard both." The city cheered, but Ned knew better than to mistake cheers for peace. That night he sat alone, removing his armor piece by piece. Outside, the streets filled with music and firelight. Inside, Ned wrote a letter to Robb. War is here, but hold fast. Winterfell must remain our heart. Do not come south unless I call. The game is not done, and wolves are best when patient. He sealed it with wax, and the direwolf sigil above. The stars burned cold and bright, and in the far east, Daenerys Targaryen stood aboard a ship bound for Westeros. Dragons circling overhead. The next storm was already gathering. The siege of King's Landing was over, but the scars it left behind would not fade easily. Fires still smouldered in the lower city, and the stench of burnt wood and burnt flesh lingered over the Blackwater Bay. Wildfire had saved the capital, but at a cost. Hundreds lay dead, many of them small folk caught between Stannis' zealots and the defenders. Yet the people called it a victory. They hailed Eddard Stark as the true protector of the realm. But Ned Stark did not feel victorious. He sat alone in the Tower of the Hand. A map of Westeros spread before him, lit by the flickering flame of a low candle. One king dead, another scattered, and a realm still cracking at the edges. The Game of Thrones did not end in fire, it only reset its board. The Tyrells now marched through the capital like they owned it. Mace Tyrell's bluster filled the small council chambers, and Laura's was cheered in the streets as the knight who turned the tide. Margaery, in widow's black, still moved through court with grace. But her mourning had hardened into ambition. She requested an audience with Ned not as a grieving wife, but as a daughter of the Reach. "I want to serve the realm," she said calmly, "not from behind a curtain of grief. Let the people see that the crown lives." Ned studied her. "You want to be queen still." She didn't deny it. "You need the Reach. We have fed your armies and bled for your king. The realm must see continuity, not collapse. And who would you wed?" She met his gaze. "Whoever the realm needs." It was a clever answer and a dangerous one. That evening, Ned met privately with Seer Barristan, Varys, and Seer Davos, who had stayed behind after Stannis' retreat. "The realm is held together by threads," Ned said. "And now the Tyrells think to weave the next cloth. They will not rest until their house wears a crown," Seer Barristan agreed. "And what of Stannis?" Ned asked Davos. The smuggler-turned-lord lowered his head. "He's alive. I saw him escape. Melisandre saved him, somehow. He believes he lost because we doubted. He speaks now of salt and smoke and kings rising from ashes. He'll return," Varys murmured. "And next time, he may not come for the throne alone. His priestess preaches of great wars and darker enemies. Enemies not of gold, but of ice and death." Ned frowned. "The wall," Varys nodded. "The Night's Watch sends ravens, whispers of dead things walking, of wildlings fleeing south like hunted animals. And there is talk of a boy bastard who now leads them." "Jon," Ned said, barely a whisper. He stood suddenly. "The war for the throne is not the only war. We prepare for Stannis, yes, but also for what lies beyond the wall." He sent another raven to Winterfell, urging Robb to begin reinforcing the Neck and sending supplies to Castle Black. The old alliances between Stark and the Watch had long been quiet. They would not remain so much longer. Meanwhile, in the west, Tywin Lannister's patience was thinning. Word had reached him of Renly's death, of Stannis' defeat, and of Ned Stark holding the city with Tyrell support. The Golden Lion did not roar, not yet, but he gathered strength. He summoned bannermen, fortified his position, and sent gold into the hands of enemies not yet revealed. He did not need to march on King's Landing, not yet. Instead, he turned his eyes on the Riverlands. Jaime Lannister, with Cersei still imprisoned in the capital, rode out with brutal precision. Villages under Tully protection burned. The Riverlords sent desperate ravens to Ned, calling for aid. Catelyn, still at Riverrun, begged her husband to intervene. Ned faced a choice: march west into Lannister-held territory and spark a new war, or wait and risk losing the Riverlands altogether. He sent Catelyn a short reply: "Hold, I am coming." Before he left, he appointed Seer Barristan as protector of the realm in his absence. Varys watched carefully. Littlefinger offered to manage the coin while Ned was away, but was politely denied. Margaery was moved to a neutral manse within the city, surrounded by both Stark and Tyrell guards. Sansa remained safe, her loyalty to her father now absolute. Arya still lived in the walls, slipping through shadows, watching, learning. Ned made no effort to bring her to court. She was safer, unseen, and across the sea Daenerys Targaryen had reached Pentos. Her arrival was met with awed fear. Her dragons were larger now, no longer mere curiosities. She met with Magisera Illyrio again and received new promises of support, ships, gold, names of Westerosi nobles who might still remember the Targaryen name fondly. She received news of Renly's death, of Stannis' defeat, of Eddard Stark ruling in place of any king. "He is not our enemy," Jorah said cautiously. "No," Dany agreed, "but he may not be our ally either." She looked down at the waters of Blackwater Bay drawn on the map. Before her, "We cross soon. And when we do, Westeros must see not a girl, but a queen. Let them crown whom they will. I bring fire and blood." Back in the north, Jon Snow now wore the black cloak of Lord Commander. The wall had grown colder, the nights longer. Scouts reported strange lights beyond the Frostfangs. Craster was dead. Fist of the First Men abandoned. Sam wrote by candlelight, sending word to Mester Aemon's old allies: "Winter is not coming." Jon told his brothers, "It's already here." And in the deep dark, the White Walkers moved southward. The Dance of Kings was nearly at its crescendo, but the real war, the war for the dawn, had only just begun. Snow drifted over the battlements of Castle Black like silent ash. Jon Snow stood at the top of the wall, Ghost at his side, watching the endless stretch of white and shadow beyond the trees. South of him, lords fought over crowns. North of him, something older stirred something that cared nothing for thrones or banners. He turned to the ranger beside him. "Send another raven to Winterfell. Lord Stark must know what we've seen." "Yes, Lord Commander," the man replied. Jon nodded. Grimly, the winds were changing, and they were cold far to the south. Eddard Stark crossed the rivers of the Trident under heavy guard, flanked by a combined force of northern soldiers and men sworn to the Reach. His banners flew high, the direwolf of House Stark, the Star of Justice, and the green rose of House Tyrell. He rode not to claim territory, but to prevent its fall. The Riverlands burned. Lannister forces had launched a brutal campaign, led by Seer Gregor Clegane and Jaime Lannister himself. Towns were razed, small folk butchered. Riverrun held firm under the Tullys, but it stood alone. Ned met Catelyn again at her family's seat. The reunion was brief, warm, but weary. There was little time for peace between husband and wife. Both knew the storm was only beginning. He held council with Edmure Tully, Brynden Blackfish, and the River Lords. "We will not allow the lion to devour the Riverlands," but we will not stoop to his tactics. Then we must strike hard and fast, said the Blackfish. Cut off Jaime's supply lines. Force Tywin to react. Ned agreed. The following week, a series of coordinated strikes hit Lannister positions across the western border of the Trident. Sir Robert Glover led a northern charge through the Golden Tooth, while Sir Loras Tyrell took command of a daring cavalry maneuver near Had. By month's end, the Lannisters had been pushed back, but not broken. Jaime Lannister, never one to retreat quietly, challenged Ned directly near Seaguard. The two met on the field before the first swords were drawn. Jaime, golden armor shining, smirked. Come to avenge the boy king, Stark. Ned's eyes were cold. I come to end this before more innocents die. They fought, steel ringing in the winter air. Jaime was fast, but Ned was unrelenting. The duel was brutal clean, but decisive. In the end, ice knocked Oathkeeper from Jaime's hands, and the Kingslayer knelt in the mud. He was taken prisoner. News of his capture shook the realm back in the capital. Tyrion Lannister received the message in silence. He looked to Margaery Tyrell across the council table. Well, he said at last, that changes everything. With Jaime in chains and Cersei still held in the Red Keep, Tywin Lannister had lost nearly everything but pride. Yet he did not surrender. He wrote one final message, one last, Raven 2, King's Landing. It bore no threat, no plea, only a name, Daenerys Targaryen. He had sent envoys to her court in Pentos, and she had answered. A month later, sails bearing the three-headed dragon of old Valyria were spotted off the coast of Westeros. Targaryen had come. She landed in Dorne, welcomed by Prince Doran Martell, who remembered the murder of his sister Ilya and her children. Vengeance and justice often walk together, he told her. Let us give them direction. She brought dragons larger now, wilder but not yet ready for war. She brought unsullied and freedmen, blood riders and advisors. But most of all, she brought a name one that echoed through the halls of power like prophecy returned. Ned Stark received the Raven in the Riverlands. He read it twice before passing it to Catelyn. She comes for the throne, he said. She is the last of her house, maybe, or maybe the beginning of something else. He returned to King's Landing with his host, passing through ravaged villages, winter settling deeper into the soil at the gates of the Red Keep. The city greeted him not as hand but as the man who had saved it. Yet the crowd's cheers sounded fainter than before. The people were tired. They wanted peace. They wanted hope, but hope wore many faces in the small council chamber. Margaery, Varys, Tyrion, and Sir Barristan sat across from him. She will demand the throne, said Tyrion, and she will have supporters, old families, the Iron Bank, perhaps even the Vale. She is not her father, said Sir Barristan, voice full of old loyalty. But she is still a Targaryen. What will you do, Lord Stark? Margaery asked. Ned looked at each of them. I will meet her, face to face, in the light, not in the shadows. They nodded, and so, once more, the hand of the king rode out not to wage war, but to stop it. He met Daenerys in the Dornish hills, the sun setting behind her as three dragons circled above. She descended from her horse, cloak billowing, violet eyes steady. You are Eddard Stark, she said. I am. You stood against my family once, and I spared your brother's life. I tried to spare your father's. Daenerys said. Nothing. He looked at her, truly looked. She was not a girl, not a conqueror, not yet a queen. But she was something else. You come to take the throne, he said. I come to fix a broken realm, she answered. With fire, if I must. With justice, if I can. He nodded. Then let's begin. Together. Above them, the dragons roared, and somewhere far in the north, beyond the wall, the others marched in silence. The long night was coming, but for the first time in many years, Westeros had a chance to face it united.